Hello, everyone. How are you? I am Violet Lee, your Tai Chi examiner. And today we're going to talk about very important issues. But don't worry, I'm not going to bore you to death. However, first of all, I do want to share with you this table, okay? Yes, I know you probably cannot see that well. And this is called Mental Health at a Glance. This is about 2024 and 25 statistics. Oh, yes, statistics sounds boring, but just let me give you an overview really quick so you know what we're talking about. So, according to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, the U.S. adult with a mental health condition, okay, just a mental health condition, can be any kind, and that 23.4%, or equivalent 61.5 million of people. That's substantial. Won't you say that? And the same study found out that adults who receive no treatment, it's very, very sad, 48%. So that means half of the people don't get a treatment. And also people with a major depression episode, we are talking about they already needs to go to maybe emergency room or whatever, 21.4 million. Lot of people, don't you agree? And then adult with anxiety disorder, and 19.1%. So these numbers are all very alarming. And to me, even worse is when we look at young adult and 18 to 25 years old, and with any of mental illness, 33.2%. That means a third of young people. And even we look at the younger generation, 12 to 17, and then they have a major, we're talking about major depression episode rate is about 15.4%. So 1 out of 6 young people and have a major depressive episode rate. And then, I know this sounds terrible, adult with serious thoughts of suicides, 14.3 million. And people living in provider shortage area, 40% of U.S. population. And this, is the same as we talk about 48% of people got no treatment at all. And then another thing is some people, even though they get treatment, but they have some kind of resistance. So this depression that's treatment resistant, it's about 35% of cases. Yeah, that's a lot. And those are being peer-reviewed, studied. And but there's a silver lining in every chaos. And of course, we know there are still many counseling, and there are some how should I say, pharmaceutical remedies. But at the same time, and scientists have found out from 47 clinical trials. So people actually suffer from these mental health, and with 3,515 people. And they found out by doing the therapeutic exercise like Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, 30 to 40% of people, they have a significant improvement. It's the same rate, and is statistically equal to effect of taking standard prescription of a depressant. So maybe that's why, and VA, and they allowed people suffer from PTSD to take Tai Chi lessons. And there are a lot of doctors nowadays advise people to take Tai Chi and Qigong, those healing art, because there is no side effect. And well, enough of me talking about the problems. And I know the numbers sounds really, really boring, right? And today, and I invited Sifu Marc Sabin back. Hey, Marc, you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi, and thank you, Violet, for inviting me back. It's nice to have another conversation with you.
Yes, and not too long ago, and Sifu Sabin, he was with us and talking about spirituality and Taoism and so forth. And he is a long time Tai Chi and Qigong instructor, and also an author of the book called the Tao of Peace, right? And
That's right.
you live in New York, right? Or in that
And
general area. And
yeah, in New York, Hudson Valley. Yep.
oh, Hudson Valley, I've been there. Oh, well, I should say I passed through there. And people um, uh, nowadays, and then it's not just in New York, and with a lot of conflicts around the world and wars and inflation. And last night I look at them and they're talking about the housing crisis, not the crisis, but in a way it is because it is so unaffordable for many people. And now we're talking about AI, and so many people, young and old, and worry about they cannot find a job. And college graduates actually they are having a hard time uh, land their feet in a nice job. So, and we can, not to mention, yes, not too long ago, Meta announced that they are going to allow the people, anyone, on Instagram and grab your image or your video or your reel, and they twist around and then create all those deep fake images and video. And of course, there was a huge, outrageous response from the society. So finally, they said, "Okay, we're not going to do it." But I'm pretty sure they will find a way to come back and do that. They already invest so much in their technology, right? So, and Marc, you have been teaching a lot of people, and can you share with us some of your experience, some of the real stories? Because numbers are cold and boring, but if you can share some of your experience, and then let us know how practicing the healing art actually put people in a better place mentally and physically. Okay.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So, one of the things that's really pretty fascinating, when I first arrived in New York City in 1997, I had come off a long layoff and needed to recover from a car accident, and I finally brought myself out to the park where I was practicing, where I had set up for my practice. My first day of practicing, I ran into a young man who was who saw me do my Tai Chi form and came up to me and asked me if I would teach him. And in the course of bringing him into the discipline of Tai Chi, his real reason for wanting to study Tai Chi was because he was actually trying to change his life. He had been involved in the world of drugs and prostitution and a really pretty dark side of life, and he wanted to change. And in order to help him go through that process, as the process would be for making change, when you do that, there's a lot of people who are around you, the people you associate with, who are going to object to that. And so a lot of what he had to deal with psychologically was how do we make the decision to stick with this new change in the way he was going to live his life from the influences he had from peer pressure and things like that. So it was a real interesting, almost a sort of a counseling situation using the experience of Tai Chi and simply the process of standing and the standing practice, where you can allow the various emotions and thoughts to run through your body without necessarily affecting you and making you alter your behavior. So in the course of wanting to change the course of his life, he needed to change his own behavior. So the things that he had been attracted to once before, those attractions still come up. It's the same way it might be in the case of somebody who has any other sort of addiction, whether it's addiction to alcohol or cigarettes or whatever it might be. When you want to change that, the body and the psyche both are going to find it objectionable because they're used to what they're used to. They have habits of behavior.
Mhm.
And when you want to change those habits of behavior, you need some method that will allow you to make the change, to find where the decision point is to change your behavior, and then work from there. So that's one story that I have of somebody that went through a very interesting life change as a result of beginning his Tai Chi experience.
So how long it actually took until he felt he has changed, or it's a process forever?
It's well, in the case of some kind of like a substance abuse situation, and I've dealt with people who've had those kind of issues. For a lot of times, people identify themselves with that behavior. So they will say, I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict, and even though they're sober, and even though they haven't used any kind of drug for a long time, they still may think or identify themselves by that behavior that they once did. And for good reason, because somebody who has had that kind of addictive behavior in the past, it's a very easy thing to slip back in. That first time you try it again can get you right back and be hooked almost instantaneously. So there's a danger to that. And so in a lot of the support mechanisms like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, one of the things that they are often looking for people to be able to do in their behavior is to identify themselves as recovering or as recovered from their addiction. And that identity can be problematic because you still are attaching to that. On the other hand, if you don't recognize the danger that you face from any time you might slip, that would be a mistake as well. So it's a very interesting and delicate operation that you need to work with somebody so that that begins to take more of a, I would say, a less predominant part of their identity because people are very complex. People have a lot of portions to their identity. They're parents, they're children, they are workers, they have jobs, they have professions, whatever it might be. So somebody that comes in and may have a practice as a veterinarian, say, but has at one time in their lives had been addicted to heroin, they may identify themselves more as being an addict than they did as being a veterinarian. Well, that's
So,
that's
so,
tipping the scales.
yeah. So how does the practice of the healing change then? And do they
Hmm.
just, yeah, you say that some of them, they already stopped using it, but they
Mhm.
have the issue of association, right? And that's how they identify. So in your observation and or in your conversation with people like that, and how did they change and why they change? And can you shed some light on this for us?
Well, yeah, one of the things that I will work on somebody that has that kind of thing, there are two predominant lessons that I think that we teach most of the people that are studying Tai Chi. The first one is the correct structure or having the right posture, these kind of things. The other is relaxation or release. So when we're talking about being able to take somebody through that process, one of the ways that I work with people is I simply have them standing. So in the standing practice, which becomes more meditative in its way, is to observe the sensations that are happening in the body and observe what's coming on. So what happens is that these the various types of ways that people have of responding will have a position or placement in their physical body. So they may find something a lot as they scan through their bodies, as they're observing what's happening in their body, they may find that a thought comes up or a memory gets stimulated, and it may be associated with just being still. So really the practice of staying in the stillness, sustaining the structure, the posture, rather than giving in. And a lot of times what happens is a person will sort of collapse inside that because of the memory or the thought. But standing up and continuing to stand, continuing to sustain that without changing the physical position will allow, like like mud settling in water, let it start to settle down. And as it settles
Mm-hmm.
down, you're first of all, you're facing what it is. So one of the behavioral things that people will do a lot of times is they'll try to push aside so they don't have to think about that. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to feel that feeling, but that feeling has a reason for being there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're dealing with coming into contending with change, actual change, you need to know where you're starting from. So if you wanted to change like
Mm-hmm.
any other journey that you want to take, whether it's a physical journey where you want to get in your car and you want to drive, I want to drive from the Hudson Valley and I want to get into St. Louis, Missouri. I have to know that I want to go to St. Louis, Missouri, but each place that I come, each intersection, I need to turn left at this intersection and right at that intersection. I have to be attentive at each moment. I can't just
So,
ignore it
so
and just,
I think that what you are talking about is the master you have been working with then, and then so then I guess I'm a little bit impatient. that's that's the nature of being a horse, and so I wondered how did they express later on say, yeah, I or they don't call themselves an addict anymore, or they feel like they are a different person. How did you identify they actually have that change? That's my curiosity.
yeah, well, I mean, certainly it's not mine to identify if it's them, right? I can't really identify for them. They would have to make the change happens within the
But did
person.
they mention anything to you, or you? I know you're very modest. You keep saying you are not a psychiatrist or anything, whatever, or counselor. But do you or did you observe anything differently from those
Oh,
people
well,
of their misdemeanor? They look a lot more calmer when they come to your class,
so a
what's
big
the
thing
change
is
in those people?
yeah, a big thing is being able to move forward in their lives. So the people that are going through really dramatic shifts in their lives, whether they're going through a divorce, they're having to move, they're having to lose a job, they've lost a spouse, things of that nature. It's really being able to weather that difficult time because you have to go through the difficult time, but you want to come out the other side. So part of being able to do that is to be able to keep them moving forward while they're going through whatever they're going through and allow them to have whatever comes up in the course of that, whether it's thoughts or feelings, or I'll watch their body. I'll particularly watch bodies because that's really what my expertise is watching people's physical body change. So when I see somebody move or tense up or I feel a spasm go through somebody, I'll look at that and I'll find a way for them to release what's going on behind that. Whenever you see some symptom, a physical
Mm-hmm.
symptom, like a shoulder tense or a jaw tighten or the eyes wandering around looking at different directions, each one of those things will be an indication of some kind of have a mental component to it. So we're looking at where the physical and the mental come together. So it's about dealing with the mind which is the mind, is the brain and the body together, not just so a lot of people talk about mind body. Well, I don't think there's a separation between mind and body. Between brain and body is the one that I determine, right? So that when I talk about your brain, what thinks, your conscious mind versus the subconscious part of you, right? So the two parts of the nervous system that are often
Mhm.
talked about. So that the subconscious will react
Mhm.
without any indication from a mental idea. And then the mental idea will often come up and try to suppress what's happening in the body. And the work that we do is to be able to allow the body to express itself, and for the brain, for that intelligent part of us, to be able to begin to understand what it's saying to us. What is it informing us about? So
Mhm.
sometimes that will happen immediately. Sometimes it will provoke a memory of a traumatic experience or even just a place that you visited. And that will come up. And as it comes up, you just allow it to have its moment of being revealed. And then it can begin to evaporate. It can begin to let go. Part of what I think the body likes to do is to hold on to things that aren't being paid attention to. So the body will hold on. So when you suppress something, you're clinging to it. And our practice, Tai Chi practice, is about letting go. That's the release component.
So are you saying by watching their body postures or their alignment, you actually could sense their improvement mentally? Am
Yeah,
I
for
right?
instance,
Or I don't want to
yeah,
misquote you.
yeah. So what I will do is here's another example. I was working with a client just recently, and we were working on this basic standing, the opening movement of Tai Chi, just the simple lifting arms, right? And we were working on that. And what I noticed is that every time that he would do that,
Okay.
his gaze would, his head would turn down and he would look slightly to his left and at about a 45-degree angle. And I was
Mhm.
watching his face when he did that. And I was looked at it and I said, when you go and you look there, that's when your self-doubt, you're doubting in yourself, rises up in your mind. Now, that was my observation. So I have to ask, is that correct? Does this resonate with you? Does this make any sense to you? And it was kind of like one of these eye-opening moments that there's a physical place that he would go to where that kind of thinking. So because this was one of the things that for him kind of kept coming back up and plaguing him, that he had lived with this from early childhood, from the kind of ways he had been treated as a young boy, where he had been bullied, where his family had treated him in certain ways, where he never did anything right, kind of thing. And so when I caught him in that place where he was looking in that particular zone, his mind and his thoughts and his feelings, his emotions would all go into that self-doubt mode. So as I had him hold his head up and keep his head up, he didn't have that experience. He didn't go into that self-doubt mode. Now that's very curious. So that what it would be just hold your posture. Then when that it wants to go back and wants to look down there to the right. No, don't keep your eyes up. And then by changing that physical behavior of
Mhm.
not looking down to the left or noticing when you're looking down to I'm looking down to the left, that's why I feel the way I feel. And I bring my
Mhm.
gaze up and now that clears that channel. So that's a
Very
good
nice.
yeah.
Very, very nice. And then you, I think during our conversation before, and then you mentioned somebody you work with has some family issues with divorce or something or death in family, and then how 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 did a person transform and from that state to a better state? And you don't have to talk about the person's name or anything, but
No,
I'm
no, I
just
understand.
curious how the practice and actually help people to move on or move along, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So this was a gentleman who it was dealing, when I first met him, he first started his Tai Chi class. He was dealing with his wife had terminal brain cancer, and he had five children, all of them teenage years. So he had a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, an 18-year-old. He had five kids that were all in those teenage years. Those are difficult years for any parent. But he had had this woman that was the love of his life, and then she passed away about 3 months into our training. So he had two major emotional difficulties. One, he was grieving for his wife, and he had five children who were grieving for the loss of their mother. But he also was becoming a single father, and he had to raise these children through their teenage years on his own. And what every bit of his emotional self wanted to be able to collapse and fold up into like a little baby and just get under the
Yeah,
blanket and
want to
hide.
be in the cocoon again. Yeah.
Exactly. Wanted to be in the cocoon again, right?
Mhm.
And of course, he knew he couldn't do that. So we would work on standing. We just worked on standing in the simple Wuji posture with just 2 feet under you, hands by your side, no Tai Chi, nothing. And what I would work with him and coach him as he was going through this, that every time I would watch his body start to decay, I would have him bring it back into this correct posture. And if he had certain physical problems, because he had some former injuries and things like that, where he had some other particularly physical things, I would work on those physical things to keep him in alignment. And just by keeping him in alignment, he would come every day, we would work on this, and he could go back into his day. So he had a chance to allow, because a lot of emotions came out in that standing practice. So this is something that happens quite often. The tears would come, the grief would come,
Oh,
all that would happen, but he had permission to be there. And I really do regard a lot of what we do in the Tai Chi healing process is letting your body have permission to follow through with it, what it needs to do.
mhm,
When
mhm.
we went through that, he was able to every day come back, deal with his family, go through the process, all the arrangements that had to be made, all the difficulties he had, and his children all were the better for it.
Excellent, excellent. You know what? I don't know if you noticed when you were talking about better posture, and all of a sudden I straightened myself. We all need to be reminded. And recently, and I have been getting into the Professor um, Ida Rolf,
Ida Rolf,
R-O,
yeah, great
yeah,
work.
and
Yeah,
her work, and then it's all about the alignment, like the gravity, everything. So I think it's great that you're not just letting this guy standing there forever by himself because he can deviate from what is supposed to be the right alignment. It is so
that's
important. He has a good instructor like yourself there and guiding him to be proper, to be correct, right? Yeah, this is
right. And
wonderful.
for
Mhm.
anybody that's practicing, one of the things, and I've certainly worked with teachers that do this, and this is certainly a big part of my teaching, is that the alignment and the adjustments of somebody's alignment in whatever posture it may be, any of the postures from the Tai Chi form, they need to be aligned for each individual's body. So even though the principles of Tai Chi are very universal, the same, you sink your shoulders, raise your spine, lift your back, lift the top of your head. These things are the same for everybody, the body parts, but everybody is unique. So different age, different size, different shape, all these things change from person to person. So how that person presents that posture has to be very personal, and yet it has to accord to the universal principles. And that may be a slight adjustment. So I make very small adjustments to people's posture, and then it fits into place, and they can feel that moment when it's correct. If you
Yeah,
use
it
those
is so
correct,
important. It
Mhm.
is so important. You say this so well, and because we are all different, we're born differently, right? We have different experience, life experience, and whatnot, and then so our bodies are different. So we follow the principle, but then sometimes people do have issue to follow it exactly, right? It's we're not a stick figure. So I think it's very, very important, for the instructor to understand each individual's needs and limitations and to work with it and to achieve the best result. So that's excellent. That's very good. And is there any other experience and stories? And you don't mind to share? I know some maybe privacy issue. You don't want to talk about that. And then uh, I just enjoy listening to you talk about the real case.
Well, so there are physical maladies that sometimes happen. So I can name names here because it was me. Uh, so when I was recovering from the accident that I arrived in New York City with, I was under chiropractic care, so I was getting a lot of care. But one day I was standing in front of my mirror in the bathroom, and I was shaving my face, and I looked and I go, my head was leaning way far to one side.
Oh,
And I was like, whoa, I better I was going, well, no wonder I can't think straight. I couldn't think straight. So I tried to crank my head over. And when I did that, it was really painful. So it was hurting my neck. So I went outside the bathroom and I had a full-length mirror, and I looked at the full-length mirror and I saw that my whole spine was twisted in a bunch of different ways.
mhm,
And what I ended up doing, and this became a sort of a hallmark of how I started to teach people postural corrections, was instead of fixing my posture where I saw the problem in my neck, I let my neck and my head go to the side. So now, instead of being bent way high, now I found a bend lower. And then I let that one lean. And so I went all the way down to the base of my spine, all the way down to my hips, and I rebuilt my posture from the ground up. So each
okay.
place where my spine was a little bit askew, I would go all the way down to the bottom, then I would get that part right. Well, now I'm leaning this way, and then I would get the next part right. And then I was leaning that way, and then and so eventually I got all the way up.
Well, then
And when I
listening to
did,
you, just say that, and again reminds me of what Professor Rolf was saying. We build a bank of blocks, right, and stacking up, and then and that looks sounds like you stack up yourself to a better way, and so you heal yourself.
yeah,
Am I
that's right.
right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. So that was one way that I found to deal with those problems, because a lot of times what happens is what we notice is the superficial symptom, but we're not really dealing with what's the cause.
Hmm.
And the reason for being able to strip this away, whether it's a mental stripping away or physical, as the case of my neck, but you take the layers away and now you begin to reveal what's lying underneath. So another story, I had a couple that I was teaching, and and I noticed that she had a problem with up in her upper part of her right side of her arm and in her chest. And they looked at her and they said, "Did you ever get injured here?" And she said, "No, no, never did." And I came back the next week and she said, "After you left, I remembered when I was 3 years old, I had pneumonia and I was in the hospital, and her lung had been really severely impacted as a young child. And
Hmm.
that scar tissue was still there and
Hmm.
was impacting how she held her body, even now that she was, 30 years old. So we went back and we undid that by allowing it, first of all, to be corrupt, just like I did with my spine. I allowed it to let it have its voice. It wants to tell you something. It has information in there in your body. Let it be there. Let it have that. And when you let that be there, it's going, oh, you finally paid attention to me. You paid attention to me. And then it can relax a little bit. Then it can let go because it's finally been given the attention that it needed. And so many times when we have these kind of lingering experiences from early traumas that we don't even remember, what happens is that we have to be able to recognize them and acknowledge them and accept them and allow them to have their voice speaking to us so that they can feel finally like they're getting comforted the way that they always needed to be comforted.
Excellent. And well, Dr. John Sarno was saying, a lot of problems, health problems, physical problems we experience as an adult actually came from the childhood problems, either mentally or physically. And that's excellent story. And you actually was able to help her. And wow. And you know what? I know you're very busy, and I really like to hear more stories. And if you can share, because who doesn't like stories, right? so, do you have more time and to tell another story, or we get you back another time?
No, I can, we could, let me come up with another story that we could have to share with you today.
Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. So one of my students that wanted to do push hands had a couple of major injuries. The first one was had some trouble, knee trouble, and her knees were always bothering her. And I said, before we can go anywhere, we really need to address what's going on with your knees, and we have to solve that problem because otherwise, all you're going to do is you're going to put yourself in a position where you're going to get injured because people are pushing on you. So we spent about a year just working on various different adjustments. Now, we would do a push hands exercise, she and I, but I wouldn't let her go push hands with a lot of other people. And each time it was to get into a certain position where that corruption would happen of her knees, and then have her hold that position and then fix underneath. So she fixed the structure of her body underneath until it was comfortable again. So a
Hmm.
lot of times when I'm working with people, I will do that sort of thing. And then we had to deal with another injury that was from the shoulders. So we had to first repair these various ways because what they have as a result is they have compensations. So when you've had an injury, now you've done, your body finds all kinds of ways to work around the fact that you can't do that anymore, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And once you sort of let that be and you find your way into the injury, now you can let it go and you can begin to recuperate. And then there's that process that takes time. It takes time to recuperate from an injury. Now, those injuries
Yeah.
don't just have a physical component to them. They're very much tied with emotions, with how you were treated as a child. So while you're doing these physical changes to somebody, the associated memories and associated emotions come back to the surface. And when those come to the surface, they will try to take and pull the body back into the compensatory positions. So now you're dealing, now you're actually uprooting a deeper issue that is behind the physical components of the injury.
Wow.
So it's not one or the other, it's both and.
Mark, I really, really enjoy speaking with you because you're very experienced and you're very knowledgeable, and I always learn so much from you. And while you're talking, and what was I thinking? Yeah. But anyway, my thoughts are not important. but oh, what I want to say is, when I hear you saying, how you observe your students and you find the root cause and you help them to to do it properly, and that's so important of having a good instructor. It just bugs me. And the people, just, watched YouTube and think they can learn Tai Chi Chuan or Qigong. I I I mean there are good teachers there, but you don't get feedback, right? And I think that this is so important, and yeah, very good. And any last words you want to share with our audience, either
I
emotional
just,
things or physical things? Yeah.
well, one of the discoveries of Tai Chi when I really discovered Tai Chi and began to explore it was that because it's an integrated mind and body and brain and spirit practice, when you combine all the levels that you can address with it, from both a healing standpoint, from the martial standpoint, but it is really uniquely designed for the human anatomy to work efficiently and to be able to heal itself. So it doesn't solve all problems. It's not a panacea for everything, but it allows your body to flow, its energy to flow in the most natural way, harmonious way for your body if done correctly. And all the positions that you may have in the postures that you home also integrate your power and your personal strength and your personal presence. So for me, this practice is uniquely designed and brilliantly
Mhm.
considered by the people who created it. It just is an amazing human achievement, I think, that they were able to come up with this incredible way of using your body and using your energy and using your mind and using your spirit. That is what Tai Chi is really about.
You say this so well. Very nice. Thank you so much for taking your time and coming back and then sharing with us some great stories. And then it just all come from your life experience. And thank you. Come
Thank you,
back
Violet.
another time, okay?
All right. All right. Yeah, good to
well,
see you again.
well, thank you so much, Mark.